You are listening to Nerd Best Friends, a podcast that covers the nerdy conversations you're already having, or wish you could. It's the nerdiest thing you'll do this week.
Welcome back to another episode of Nerd Best Friends. I am Annalise, and I'm here with my best friend, Rob.
Hey, it's me, Rob, your best friend, your super nerd, and your podcast host. Enjoy Nerd Best Friends across all popular podcasting platforms. Your support means the world to us, so be sure to click subscribe or follow on all of your devices. If you're looking to take your support to the next level, consider joining us on Patreon or supporting us through a one-time donation on Venmo.
It's episode 52 for Nerd Best Friends, and you've heard of man caves, she sheds, maybe even game rooms. Today we're going to talk about the evolution to the nerd room. But first, what I like about it.
This episode on what I like about it, we're going to have a conversation about ChatGPT, and specifically ChatGPT as a support or a host for your RPGs, your role-playing games, and the different games that you're playing. I will say, for one, straight up, we play a game of Masks, which is a Powered by the Apocalypse system. It's a comic book based game mechanic kind of thing. And we are constantly being introduced to supervillains and superheroes and people with all kinds of wacky powers. And it is so much fun for me to sit there with ChatGPT open and be like, hey, I need an image of a teenage superhero that has lava powers. Boom. Some super cool artwork comes in and we share it. We're like, oh, it gives us like this point of reference. And so one of the things that we have there is a big spreadsheet with all of the, like, for our notes of all of the NPCs and like different heroes and villains that we've encountered through the game, right? So we have this for reference, and it's so handy to have a picture there to go with it, for me anyway, when we start hearing names like, oh, such and such is there, and I'm like, I click over, I'm like, oh yeah, that's that person.
Oh yeah,
in their
lava
power
boy.
kind of thing. Yeah, exactly.
I think it's making this round of Masks that much more enjoyable because there's that visual image. We play on Zoom, right? Masks doesn't have a board. We're not on
there's no
Roll20.
minis, there's no cards.
Yeah. It's really imagination. So to be able to click over to the NPC list on our spreadsheet and look at these pictures that you've had generated by ChatGPT is pretty phenomenal. It's definitely brought it to life. And I don't know if it's because of that or it's just this round of Masks, but Andrew he's laying on the heat with all the NPCs.
There's
like
a million characters.
Yes.
There's a million characters in this story.
And we were trying to, at the beginning of our last session, he was like, okay, who can tell us what was happening? We're like, well, there was a person. Was it this name? It was this name. Wasn't it a person that like,
which one is that? Oh, the one with the big angel wings. Got it. Yeah.
Right. And then we had to click on and go, oh, yeah. Exactly. So I really enjoy it, but I know you've used it in other fashions too, right? ChatGPT, you've used it to help guide D&D role-playing game as well, right?
Absolutely. When I'm making my own adventures, I'll have a thread going for whatever thing that I'm working on, and I'll just have it generate ideas. Oh, I need a random encounter for the characters as they move from the haunted castle into the swamp. And if they get a random encounter, what could it be? And it'll give me a list of 10 ideas. I'm like, oh, okay, let's do number 3. Write me the narrative box text for that. Cool. Done. Like it's just that fast and that easy. And then if you wanted to, you hit the little icon so that you and it are talking back and forth to each other, and you can just play D&D. It'll be your dungeon master. It knows all the rules because they're all free online. Funny. And so you could just be like, hey, I want to play Dungeons and Dragons. I made a first level fighter. I'm ready. Go. And it will, like, you can sit there and play D&D for hours and hours all night long with your dice and your character sheet with ChatGPT and just talk about the decisions you want to make, let it know what you rolled, and it's your DM.
And you flat out said you've had conversations in the car with your ChatGPT, right?
Absolutely. And that's another tangentially related to D&D. When I'm driving home from an out-of-town session and it's late and I'm falling asleep, I'll just start having conversations with ChatGPT about the game. Hey, we just finished the game. The characters did this and this and this. Oh, that's really interesting, Rob. Blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, oh, yeah, those morons, they were supposed to go through the magical mirror, but they chickened out and then they went to this other place. Ooh, that sounds frustrating, Rob. What did you do to them? I do have to tell, I did at the last time I was doing that, I was like, hey, could you make your answers shorter and your questions more often? Because you are putting me to sleep as I'm trying to stay awake. You're not
You
helping
could
me.
just call your best friend and have a conversation.
I'm not going to call you at 10:30 at night while I'm
When have you
driving
not
home,
called me at
bothering
10:30 at
you.
night? Come on now.
You should be sleeping at 10:30 at night.
Ain't no sleep for the principals. We ain't get no sleep.
Should be.
No, I think it's really, you're like the third person who's mentioned to me now that you can have a flat out conversation with your chat GPT. I think I'm too scared to try. I'm not ready for that level of intimacy with my technology yet.
I will say it's not the movie Her. It's very superficial and professional.
I mean, I haven't
when
even
you're
seen
talking
that
to
movie,
ChatGPT.
but I understand the premise of it.
Like,
But
you're not going to fall in love with ChatGPT.
No,
It's
I-
not.
I already have conversations with myself out loud. I'm going to add a piece of technology in it. I don't know. It's an interesting thought, but to circle back to what you were saying, I've appreciated in D&D games. Well, I'll go very particular. When we played in Vegas, the final session, I know you used ChatGPT to really paint the picture in the opening monologue
text,
before So I thought that was really great because it really, the finality of that whole session really started on the right note because you had it plugged into ChatGPT.
Right. That is something that makes it easy. I think it's a role play aid, especially for me if I'm running a game and I'm playing a lot of different characters. Like we talk about with role playing in the past, it's like, explain to me this character and their motivations in like 1 to 3 sentences. So I'll have a thread that's like, okay, I've got this character, this is the big bad evil guy and his motivations are A, B, C. There's also going to be a henchman who's like this. And then I have these people who are like this. Give me some dialogue for when we transition from this part of the fight to the next part of the fight. Or give me some dialogue for this person when they walk into the room and that kind of thing. And it's like, even if I just read it and like to myself, not like verbatim, it's like it's put in my mind the kinds of things that person would say to express their motivations and that kind of stuff. So I'm not just making it up off the cuff while I'm also keeping all these numbers in my head and remembering what minis to move and all that kind of stuff. It's just It's been very helpful to me for those games. And if that's and I'm sure it's the same for like all kinds of other hobbies that you're doing, whether it's those board games, even mini painting. I've had it go like, hey, I want to paint this squad of guys. I want to give them an autumn color scheme and vibe with warm colors and saturations. What might that look like? And it'll generate an image of like perfectly painted minis. And I'm like, oh yeah, okay. I didn't really think that I would have to use so much green because I was thinking orange and yellows. But yeah, without the cool color, there's no balance and blah, 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 blah. It's insane.
I think we talk about this anytime we talk about ChatGPT, but we want to make clear that we do believe in supporting art and artists and paying money for things, copyrighted things, rightfully so. The use of ChatGPT is not for us, is not being used publicly. You're not selling the things that you're creating. It's just for us and for fun. And that's kind of why ChatGPT exists, to help people enjoy their lives more.
I think so. I think it's a tool to make your life better. And I think that in a professional setting, more and more those people who we are paying for their work and their art, it's going to be a starter point for everybody, whether you're an artist, a writer, a reporter, whatever it could be. Just like we had advancements in other technologies such as, well, I paint miniatures all the time. So I'm going to say contrast paints and speed paints.
Oh gosh,
right?
yes.
Like, is that cheating? Right? That was kind of a conversation when they came out, was like, oh my gosh, is this cheating? You're supposed to put down your base paint, your layer paint, and your highlights and do it right. And I'm like, done. I'm getting this done faster. It's making me happy and I'm moving on with my life. That's how things advance.
Love it.
But anyway, whatever your hobby might be in your nerdy world and when you're sitting in your nerd room, which we're about to talk about, how can chat-based AI tools work for you?
And that's what you like about it.
Oh, that's what I like about it.
Let's get to some nerd mail.
Nerd mail.
Intern Joan comes in with the research. So on our episode, What Are You Doing? I had mentioned one of my 24 for 24 goals was to enroll or sign up for the Mendocino County Library. And that's hard because it's only open when school's open. So I'm always at school and blah, 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 blah.
Oh, yeah. Because we're always talking about like how great the library apps are and Hoopla and renting things and reading comics and all this kind of stuff. Yeah.
And now that I'm like heavy into audiobooks right now, I'm just using Audible credits to get the books I want. I'm on book 4 of 6 for that 2024.
Oh, nice.
Listening to 6 Stephen Kings that I had read as a teenager. Well, I went to age 20 and that I don't remember reading. I just know I read it. So I'm on the 4th. It was Needful Things, The Green Mile. I finished Christine earlier this month, and now I'm on Bag of Bones. I'm on the 4th of 6 for my goal for 2024. Anyways, intern Joan with the research.
Okay.
She
Audible
said
credits, they're expensive. That's not the way to do it. We need a library solution.
We need Hoopla, and there are libraries, state library systems that during the pandemic will allow anyone to sign up from anywhere and use their Hoopla. So she gave an example of Florida. She sent me a link to state of Florida public library system where you can sign up for an account anywhere and you can just use their Hoopla, which I haven't done it yet, but she did send it to me, and I wanted to let our listeners know that it's out there. If you have trouble physically getting to your city or county library, there are other states that allow their Hoopla and online reservations to anyone in the country.
Well,
and I think that's amazing.
What state are you going to go with? Are you going to go with multiple states? Can you do multiple ones? Are you going to go with?
I think you can just sign up for as many as you want.
Over there. That's not going to be a good Hoopla experience.
No, that's the other that she, intern Joan also then followed that up with, although you might have trouble getting books that you actually want to read in Florida. I probably won't be Florida, but I think she said Colorado is one of the other ones. So I'm going to look up the other ones. I'll put it on the newsletter, but that way at some point when I can go to the county library here, I will. And I think just having us registered for them helps their numbers too. So sign up for your local library, everybody. And now on to the topic. We're talking about nerd rooms today, Rob.
There's a lot to talk about. This is a whole thing. Let me do some quick calculations in my head about how much time I probably spend in my nerd room a week, because it's a multifaceted place. It's the place where I play D&D. It's a place where I organize and clean my things. It's a place where I paint my miniatures, all this kind of stuff. So, gosh, if I come home,
you do your homework.
I'm doing my homework, right? It's my home office as well. So let's say 2.5 hours per night times 5 days a week.
3.5 hours?
12.5 hours. And then on the weekend, it's definitely probably 8 hours a day in there. So that's another 16. So that's, I'm probably spending 24 to 30 hours a week
in your
nerd room. In the nerd room.
In your game room. And that, you bring up a good point. Yes, about the hours, but also the nerd room itself. I don't know where this term was coined. I started using it. We started using it. We have man caves, and you and I've been online. We know what man caves look like. They're typically like sports themed or bar themed.
Big screen TV, a pool table, maybe a kegerator.
Yeah. Depending on the size. Yeah. And or
taxidermy animal heads.
If that's your thing. Or I've seen those obnoxious ones like, I'm a Kansas City Chiefs fan. I'm going to put everything Kansas. It looks like I cubed up Kansas City. But there's all kinds of man caves. And then there's she sheds, which I think typically ones I've seen tend to be softer and decor and lighting, and maybe also a big screen TV, but also like cozy chairs and blankets and maybe even a bar. It depends on the she shed.
A wine cellar type situation.
Exactly. And then you have game rooms, right? And when you hear game room, what do you think about? What comes to your head?
When I think about the game room, it actually, like, I would say originally it would be that place where, like, it's the classically it would be like that basement where you go down and play poker with your buddies once a week kind of thing, right? It's got the poker table in the middle, and it's got, the chairs and stuff, and maybe a bar and that kind of thing. But as I think about it now, and I think as things have gotten more popular, it's the D&D room, or it's the place where you've got all your comic books and your shelves and that kind of thing. And I know we certainly have ideas to share about like what we've done in that space as well. I don't find it, obviously it's not as gendered as the idea of the man cave, or then the response of the she shed and stuff like that. It's a more inviting space.
Well, and you brought up a good point in that evolution, right? The game room typically was for games. And you mentioned like that poker room, and maybe then someone has kids, and then it turns into where the kids' toys are, where it's the playroom. And then as they get older, maybe it's got a big screen and you've got your Xbox or your Switch, and that's where you go and video game. The game room was specifically a playroom. Then you mentioned where your comic books are. And I think that's the step into the nerd room idea. I think both of us have a nerd room that's multifaceted. And you even started off by saying, I paint here, I do work here, I clean and organize stuff here. This is where I play D&D. So my nerd room is the same. Yeah, I've got a bookshelf of Stephen King books. I can come in here on a comfy chair and sit and read. I've got 2 separate desks in here. I've got a table for podcast and I've got a desk for painting and working.
Yeah.
Right. I've got my comic books in the closet. I also hang like my fancy suits in here. So I also change in here sometimes. The nerd room is exactly that. It's that multifaceted. This is where I do my hobby.
Yes. So let's talk about designing your nerd room, because wherever you are and however you're thinking about your nerd room, it's always going to be this either extra space or repurposed space in your home. Right.
Yeah.
So for some, it might be the garage, right? When I'll be able to talk about 2 kind of nerd rooms that I've done. The first one that I had where we lived before was a garage. And what I did there. Now it's this interesting room. It's kind of an add-on room to this house that I'm living in now, where it used to be like a big porch that went alongside the outside of the house. But the previous, or whoever the homeowners were, they enclosed it into this big, long kind of utility room. It became this extra room. So it's the length of, the short side of the house. And it's just one big room where what do we want to do with it? Kind of thing. Like, how are we going to purpose it? Yours is an extra bedroom. Right?
Correct.
So instead of having like a dedicated guest room, like you think a lot of people do in their homes, it's like, nope, I don't want guests. I can stand at the hotel for all I care. Sleep on the floor. I need this space that I could use it every day, kind of thing. I know a lot of people will do this when, say, they have kids and one of their kids will move out, go to college, or go straight on their own. It's like, jackpot, this room, I'm going to reclaim.
I got my hobby room.
For my hobby room.
My sewing room, my blah, blah, blah room. Yeah.
Exactly. So because you're repurposing a room or repurposing some kind of space, whether it be a basement or an attic or whatever, your design will be different. And I think part of the fun is that creativity of like, okay, what could I do in here?
Right. What hobbies can I bring here that can be organized and this room could be used widely rather than just sitting around waiting for a guest? That's what we came about. Like, I don't know that I ever had like a nerd room or a game room in previous places I lived. Certainly there were times I had like an office because I'd come home and do work from work, right? A lot of band director work, a lot of the logistical stuff I'd type up at home or whatever. And that would have like a little TV and like a video game system and bookshelf. So it was already multi-purpose use, just not thought about as a nerd room. Where we're living now, we have a guest room and just happen to have this other bedroom that my partner Sarah is like, you're having a nerd room and you're putting all your crap into that room and I don't want any of it out in the rest of the house. So she's like, I'm giving up this room so you can have all your hobbies. And she supports. She's like, I love that you have your nerd hobbies and you can leave me alone for a few hours in a day and hence the nerd room. So we're using this bedroom as my nerd room instead.
When I was living in the previous place to this, there was a garage and it was really just a carport where, you'd walk in and it was just studs and cobwebs and an oil stain on the floor kind of thing. But it was like, hey, for the low price of not parking my car in here, I have ultimate potential to be able to turn this into an extra space for myself. And so that one, we finished it, right? We put up drywall and we put in a ceiling and we built custom shelving, and then came kind of the fun like design of it, which was I want to have like a retro Star Trek look to it. So we painted the walls and we painted the ceilings all this kind of neutral gray, and then we put big bright orange stripes across the walls, and we made the shelving this bright yellow color to kind of look like lattice work and stuff. And then it came time to like put in the tables, and we played Warhammer out there, and I had a workshop, like a workbench there for doing modeling and some spray painting and stuff. Very different from where I am now and had the nerd room. And this nerd room looks completely different before the pandemic to now, which was first I just crammed all my stuff in here from the other place. And then it was like, okay, well, how can we smartly like put the giant game table, but then we need to kind of separate some space for storage and this and that. And there was a lot of mismatched stuff and it was very dark. And I was just constantly thinking like, we've got this big dark table. We've got dark black shelves. We've got, like curtains kind of separating things out, and it's messing with the light. After spending a bunch of time in here during the time when we were all working from home and all that kind of stuff, it was like, no, let's brighten this place up. I want this to be completely different. And that kicked in an incredible different thing to just gut the place and replace everything with big, bright furniture and stuff that makes it feel cleaner and open and all this kind of stuff. So designing your nerd room is fun.
Yeah, I had a blast, even considering this room when we moved in almost a year ago now, is that I already had some shelves that I purchased for my quote unquote nerd room in my last apartment, which was also a guest room. So like 2 shelves was it, 2 shelves in my desk because we also had a bed in the room in case we had guests, right?
Right.
I took these 2 shelves and I happened to measure it out, and I had my eye on the Calyx boxes. And I know we've kind of talked about this throughout the season, but like found out that the Calyx boxes that would match these 2 shelves from IKEA fit exactly against this wall in between the 2 shelves. So went and did that. And I have reshuffled everything else around a few times now that I have 2 tables in here. That also came about because we got a new dining table and didn't know what to do with this. And I was just going to sell it. But then I thought, I think it's small enough. It'll fit right here against this little wall in the nerd room. And I can do all my podcast stuff on this table and then do all my everything else on the other table. So it's worked out really well a few times, but definitely is exact to this room. So should we move again? I hope not anytime soon, but it would be reconfiguring what it is in a new space. So,
and decor wise, I mentioned I have a lot of like bright white walls and white space, and all of the furniture, not all of the furniture, but the furniture that I try to buy is light colored or white and stuff because I'm looking for that bright thing. And as far as like decor, I've decorated this room as far as like if I have like posters and things on the wall, it's maps, right? RPG games always come with big maps, or fantasy novels always open up with a big map. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 maps up on the wall, as well as like a cool Doctor Who poster and a Spider-Man poster and some other stuff. But the idea is like when you walk in, you see all these fantasy maps and you see all this stuff like, you know what this room is, right? It kind of looks like a comic book shop or a game store in some kind of ways. Right. But I was going to ask about your lighting situation because I know that's been something that's important to you and you've been messing around with for this room and the last.
Yeah, I will say 2 things to that. Number 1, the lighting in here is good. I have some recessed lights that the owner put in, and they're on a dimmer, but they hum really bad. And so I turn them off when we record. And then sometimes the hum is so bad that I have to turn them off completely. But then there's a fan in this room and a light in that fan, but the light in the fan's not that exciting. I'll probably get a fun bulb for it that can do different colors and stuff. But once I have that, I'll install it. For me, the LED lighting has really changed what I do with the nerd room. And I started by having some LED lights, but that was also because the nerd room in my last apartment was the room that my stepdaughter lived in when she stayed with us. So she put in a bunch of lighting. And then when she left for college and we were turning it into guest/nerd room, I kept the lighting in there. And I'm like, actually, this is really cool to sit and play D&D with this like fancy lighting all around me. So when we moved, I made a point to put that lighting on the Calyx boxes, and I'm working on what to do with the bookshelves. We've talked about this before too. I don't want to cut holes into it to get lighting in and out of those shelves. So, or at least like the wires to plug them in or whatever. But what I love about the LED lighting and what I've seen all over social media in research for this episode, there was also a thread, by the way. I'm on a board game group in Facebook, and I'm going to get the actual name for it right now because there's so many board game groups. This one's called Board Game Revolution Community. And there was a whole thread about nerd rooms. What does yours look like? How does it function? I'm like, this is really funny because I was coming on to ask the same thing. So I just kind of put a dot in it and followed the thread. And people have amazing lighting features using LED lights. So I saw a video of one where the dude made lightning flashes while he's playing D&D. Right? Like people go all out. Mine's just simple lighting. I'll put it on colors based on my mood. Like if I'm watching a 49ers game in here, I'll put one row red and one row gold, or like I need it to be just dimmer, or when I'm playing Final Girl and it's all red and it lights up the whole room in a reddish glow. I play with the lighting a lot. And so at each of the desks, I also have an LED lamp that's good for like social media recording and stuff like that.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Like I have that, like one of those, you can see it in my glasses. I have one of the circular lamps on this one. And then I have one that goes over the minis when I'm painting on the other desk, and I'll put those on. Mood lighting is so cool to play around with in a nerd room. And I don't have fancy, like your nerd room is great because you have the fancy sunlight.
Right. That does help make it real bright because there's 2 skylights or whatever they're called.
Skylights. There's the word. I don't have that. So I'm looking at how can I maximize this little darker corner of the house with the mood lighting as part of my decor. I really love it. I'm really a big fan of LED lights.
Right. And we do spend a lot of time here at night. So I actually replaced, they were like, the little globe kind of very dim lighting fixtures in this room, rip those out. And I put these bright LED angular movie things for specifically like that needs to spotlight right there where I paint. And this one needs to spotlight spotlight right here where my display cabinet is. And this one needs to spotlight like into this cupboard when I open it and those kinds of things. So yeah, tons of fun there with just kind of the designing and figuring out how we're going to use this space most efficiently. And then comes that furniture kind of thing. Like you're going to purchase stuff. You're going to want to make sure. Now, sometimes you can build it. I did have fun. Like I was saying, when I converted my garage into our nerd room, like we built the workbench kind of into the wall and we built the shelves custom there that would fit exactly what I needed. Cause it was like, well, this is still the garage. So I got to have like my big, Rubbermaid bins full of Christmas decorations and whatever. But also on this side is my big Rubbermaid bins that we're storing all my Warhammer armies and my spray cans and my this and that. So we did some custom building there, which was fun. But then there's also the idea of like, how do we get everything to match? What kind of space is going to be most efficient? You know, if it's in the home like ours is, people come back here. Like it's a part of the house, right? It's not like upstairs in the bedroom or downstairs in the basement where no one goes. It's a room in the house that people see right off the kitchen. Right. So it's got to kind of look okay. Right.
Well, you bought some really great, I know they're not custom, but they basically look like they were custom made for that area in your nerd room. But you bought some big, what are those? Are they like 7-foot, 8-foot cabinet?
They might only be 6, but they look extended because I have things on top of them.
Oh, maybe.
But yes, that was a big deal for the cabinets, for the big cupboards I went through a ton of different ideas, and from like custom closet insert things to china cabinets. So there would be like glass doors and all that kind of stuff. And basically what it came down to was I need the most storage possible. So I just have these like big white cupboards that just go along the entire wall. So I've got 4 of those, and then another like open shelf after that for 5 big cupboards. But it's so like they all match. They're all linear. The lines are even. Like it definitely speaks to my I don't really have OCD, but it speaks to my very like linear and organized brainwaves. And I know you put a lot of thought into yours too, because you went with a place where it's like a very popular gaming furniture was the Calyx shelves.
It's called Calyx,
all the time.
So I mean, they're your basic squares, right? I think everyone who's lived in a dorm or university apartment has gone and bought those shelves that are just squares, and you put the little canvas boxes in and out of them, right? The little foldable, like, so that's basically what Calyx is. But the Calyx is a particular size, and I don't know the dimensions off the top of my head, but it's basically the dimensions that most of the board game companies are building their boxes as, most of them, but particularly the luxury games that are like Kickstarters, they're all using this same dimension. That's why Final Girl fits so well. Where is it? Right here.
I can see it.
There's series. I'm having trouble. There we go. There's series 1 and 2 that fit perfectly in the box together like that, because that's actually how they described it in the Kickstarter. One series box is half a Calyx, depending on which direction you put in it. If you can put it 2 side by side, or you can fit one. If I turn it to the front and take up the whole box, it'll fit that box with that front scene in it. So I wanted Calyx, but I didn't have space for it in my last apartment. So that's what was the cool about coming here. And I put the 2 bookshelves on either end just to see what I could fit in the middle right under the window. And I happened to measure it, and it was like an inch more than the length of the Calyx box. So I went with that, and I love it. So I used IKEA, and because of the multifunction of my nerd room, this ironically, unless I'm solo playing, I have my little foldable table to play Final Girl, and also it functions as laundry folding station on Sundays. I take that table out and fold all the laundry and then put it away and put the table away. It's phenomenal to do that. When me and my partner play games, we play out in the living room or in the kitchen at the dining table. So our nerd rooms aren't necessarily even game rooms, except for gaming like D&D online or, whatever, or solo games, because it can fit on my one table, right? So the functionality there was important to me, that the Calyx can be, skinnier against the wall. I can fit my board games in it. I have shelves with glass doors to show off my little collections and stuff. Like, this is truly like a nerd cave as well as a nerd room, because I have the decor of all my, I've got pictures, and I've got mementos from marching band, and I've got a Beauty and the Beast thing that I have, and wooden box that my dad made is sitting in here. Like, so it's like a keeper of everything for all of my hobbies in one space. And so IKEA furniture was the jam for me.
I went through a couple different iterations as far as furniture goes, with, like I was talking about with the garage before this. That was back in Rob's Warhammer days. So I had also custom built a big 6x4 full size Warhammer table.
I remember it.
That would lean up against the wall when we weren't using it. And then when it was time to play, we put down some sawhorses and then flop that thing down on top of it and play some Warhammer. And then that idea kind of stretched through to a place where I currently am, where it was like, well, we're not going to do this sawhorses thing. Let's buy a game table. So we went to one of those like little mom and pop, I call them weird Mexican furniture stores, but that might just be a California thing where you get these like ridiculous, like cool pieces of furniture. And I had this giant wooden table with this deep stain and these huge like carved legs and chairs that went with it with big,
gorgeous
things. It was so fun and so cool to have this big table, but then that table had to do everything. Like you were saying, it was like that table was what it was in here. So it was the painting table, it was the work table, it was the meeting place, it was it was that. And eventually we changed from that. So now I don't have a gaming table in the nerd room anymore. It's not the game room anymore. It's kind of the nerd room because what we decided to do was get another kind of going full circle. Now we have a tabletop that kind of sits in a little cover in the room. And when it's time to play games, we take it out and we just lay it on top of the kitchen table. Or we have a small one we lay on top of the ottoman in the living room. And it's got the border, the raised border around it. And it's got the neoprene mat and you can attach cup holders and stuff to it. But it just packs away into the closet when we're not using it because, like you were saying, when we're gaming with people, it's more social. So we'll be in the dining room right there next to the kitchen, or we'll be in the living room sitting on the couch and, not stuffing ourselves into the game room anymore.
That does make me a little jealous of people who have basements, right? And they can have these big luxury custom made tables where there's LED lighting around the table and it's recessed. So the game is down and you have your lip around the edge of the table. And I would love for someday to have a space that's large enough to have that big table and also be my nerd room. So I certainly don't have that now. And I know for you, it's either or. And I think all that what you were describing also was happening while Andrew got a little bit older and then needed a dedicated workspace beside your kitchen island to do his homework and other projects. And then I know he got into painting a little bit, so he needed a workspace. And the pandemic came where we're all at our computers a lot more anyways. So I know standing desks, like I got a standing desk. I think Maria has the newer version of it from Costco. That became part of the decor just by necessity.
Exactly. Yeah, me too. Got the standing desk for work, but it also sure does work great for painting miniatures and running D&D games and all that kind of other stuff.
Yeah. If you remember on the newsletter, show our listeners what your tabletopper looks like, because I think it's really cool.
Oh, absolutely.
I think it's really, really cool.
Make a note.
And I will say that one wish of mine would be to have a space big enough to have, it doesn't have to be a giant one, right? I live so far away. I don't know that I'll need a table for 6, but maybe a table for 4, maybe a longer table that I can set out. I would love a recessed one that I can put something over and leave the game out. Because I can't do that now because I have a cat. So I'm going to have eaten meeples or missing meeples. I'm going to find
those are the coolest where you have the dedicated table and then you can put a tabletop slats on top. So it's like, oh, it's also just our kitchen table. Like that's really cool.
To me, that's the dream, whether it's a kitchen table or in a game room, nerd room. I know people who do puzzles have tables that too. Right. And they just put the thing over and the puzzle's nice and safe until the next time they open it up. Like, to me, that's my ultimate dream, but it's not going to happen in this house that we live in.
One of these days, I mean, I've just floated the idea of like, it's funny. We've had our kitchen table since we've been married.
Before Andrew was born.
I think that table's coming up on 20 years old. Like, I'm going to get a new kitchen table someday, and that kitchen table is going to be a game table. Like, there's no way we spend $1 on a new table and it's not a game.
That doesn't have
like
the
game table,
yes.
Come on.
Hey, when that happens and you get rid of your topper, let me know.
That would be the next thing. Like, if we didn't need it, we could move that out.
That's amazing.
Absolutely.
Oh, you talked about decor. I'm just going to mention real quick. In this place, I have kind of corners. I have like a comic book wall that has some fun stuff on it. I've got like my horror wall. I've got a great welcome to the Hellmouth sign that intern Jones sent me when I moved to this place. I have my Fiesta Giles still in the box hanging up here. I've got my book corner, and then I've got a corner that I have like personal photos. So my decor is a little all over the place, and I try to do themes per wall. That's how I did decor here. And so again, some people have a more flowing theme than just like, here's all this crap that I own.
Right. I mean, I have seen people who, okay, this is my game room. This is where we play D&D. They'll paint the walls to look like a fantasy medieval castle or outdoor forest landscape thing. It's also very popular to do sports themes, right? If that's also the place where you're watching the game and stuff with your buddies, like it becomes the coolest Pittsburgh Pirates room that ever existed kind of thing, right? Yeah. The other part of that for me is if there's an ounce of wall space, if there's an inch of wall space,
Yes.
I'm putting a shelf on it.
Heck yeah.
Right? Like all of the, like I was talking about all the posters and stuff. It's like those posters are on the back of the door. They're on the side of the fridge. They're in places on the side of the shelf. Like there's no, if I can add a shelf, it's a shelf. It's storage.
Right. It makes sense.
Another fun part about setting up your nerd room is the tech involved, depending on what you're doing. So a lot of kind of things that seem ubiquitous to us in our nerd rooms 30 hours a week, actually took some time and like some thought about what goes into this and what's going to make it functional for all of these different things that we have to do.
And
I mentioned this as a springboard to you to talk about the gigantic spring-loaded boom mic you're talking about at your podcasting station.
I guess I'll have to share a picture of this. What I was thinking as you were finishing that question was, for me, it's morphing. For a while, I did not have a television even in the nerd room, just my little corner that I can plug in the power to the computer and a second monitor for when we play D&D. And here's a little space to hold all my dice. And like I had all my dice and dice towers and stuff in a plastic box that just went into the closet. And I would take it out every time we played. To where I am now, like I'm still shifting the tech we have in here. I just added my Xbox from our living room because when we mounted the TV, I said, unless we go buy all the mounts for all these things, we're going to have cables just running to the side. That's ridiculous.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So I just put the Xbox in here, but the Switch is still out there. So now I have an Xbox and that plays Blu-rays, and I have a TV in here. And that was really helpful, like when I was painting and doing work in the fall, because I put a football game on and just be listening to it while I was doing stuff. I also like using my AirPods to listen to things, but also my ears get really tired of it. I don't know if you have that problem, but they just start getting really itchy.
Yeah.
I mean, I may have, I think I have eczema in my ears is what one thing my doctor mentioned might be a thing. So I have like eardrops, but point being, like sometimes I just can't deal with the headphones. And also one time I creeped myself out listening to scary music by myself playing Final Girl. So I'm also looking for a sound bar to put in here. So when I have that game on, I can have like a more immersive experience with the sound instead of just in my ears. When we moved the old tiny dining table in here, and I decided to make this my dedicated podcast space, I went and got a boom mic to have this mic. All I've got to do is lift it up and walk away. And like, instead of taking the 20 minutes to unpack it, undo the wire, set it all up, and then do that again at the end of the podcast to pack it all up in its little foam box. Now it's just sitting here and ready to go anytime I do recording stuff. So then I have a monitor on this table to do podcasting. And I also sit, if you notice just the angle that I'm sitting, I tend to play D&D here as well, because it's got more space for me to have notes and my dice tower or my thing of dice and thing I roll it in. And I've got the lighting facing this way. So then I have my other workstation that I can leave paints out and leave my painting stuff out. Like after today, it's set up for me to go back to the more comfy chair, the big chair, where I also have a secondary monitor. That's where I do my editing. And when I work on the podcast, I sit in the comfy chair. That's not really tech, but the tech part of that is you have
two different stations with two different computers at it?
I mean, well, monitors. It's the same computer. I just take from one to the other. But,
oh, you do? Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. I have like double everything in here. So the tech for me is evolving into getting a sound bar so I can play scary music while I play Final Girl or any other games that have you do well with the thematic music. I know you put a Bluetooth speaker somewhere in the room and play thematic music sometimes when we're playing in person. I want to do that even by myself. But then I also have the headphones option when my partner's home and doesn't want to hear. But it's all evolving. And the LED lights, of course, is part of technology, but I'm still working on maxing out this nerd room. And I know you are too. You have all kinds of stuff.
I was thinking, even as you were talking, I was like, I wonder if it is going to be time. Right now, I also have a TV, and our PlayStation 4 is attached to it, over on one wall, and it's all mounted. But the PlayStation 5, which Andrew plays most often, is in the living room, the bigger TV and stuff. And that was very purposeful. We definitely didn't want to put that in his room where he was just going to be locked away all the time. It's nice to have him, out and in the house, and you can see what he's doing and talk to him and that kind of thing.
Right.
But with the nerd room, like we spend so much time in here, like there's no reason why maybe it could move back in here and add to the nerdy stuff going on back here. As far as setup goes, I've got a computer with a couple monitors. Sometimes those two screens will be supplemented with a phone screen and an iPad screen.
Yes.
And whatever. And my station here, I also have hooked up. DirecTV gives you a little dongle. So instead of like a cable box,
Oh, okay.
Okay, so follow me on this. There's a little dongle you hook up to your TV to use
Right.
DirecTV. It's instead of a
Okay.
cable box. On my TV, I have an Apple TV, so I use the DirecTV app.
Aha.
So I took this dongle and I put it on the monitor in here. So this is either a computer monitor or it could just be
Or
another
television.
TV.
Oh,
So
that's smart.
so originally it was like, well, I have to have a TV back here because I got to watch my hockey games and Andrew's always like playing
Whatever
Skyrim or
game.
whatever on the thing. So I had to have a TV, but now now I've got two TVs back here. So it might be an opportunity to get the PlayStation 5 back here. I don't
There you
know.
go.
Yeah. Right next to my desk is Maria's desk. Her desk is always perfectly clean and nice. She just brings her iPad with her magic keyboard and does whatever kind of work she needs to do. Then she just folds it up and puts it in the drawer and it's all nice. And then she'll take out her painting stuff. And when she's done, she puts it all away and packs it up all nice. And then right next to that is Andrew's desk where he also has a laptop and monitor set up and his nice chair and stuff where he can do his homework and do his writing and be on Discord with his friends and play D&D and all that kind of stuff as well. So that tech-wise, and we talked about the lights and stuff like that. Oh, and then there's also on the other side of the room is the 3D printing station,
Of course,
right? Which
of
I got
course.
like a kitchen type, like I think it's called a butcher cart
Butcher
or something.
block. Mhm.
Butcher block cart kind of thing. It's got, it's not too big, but it's got a shelving and it's got a little cabinet on the bottom and the 3D printer sits perfectly on top of it. And so everything can be stored in the drawers and in the cupboards, the filament and the tools and everything. So that sits over there too. So that's tech wise, that's what I'm rocking.
I mean, that's a lot. And
There's a lot
good
of tech in
luck.
here, yeah.
Yeah, I love it. Do you have themes? Do you ever work with themes?
Nope. My only theme is light colors and brightness. And I didn't want this to be a cave. I wanted it to be a bright, clean, fun, inviting space, kind of like a sunroom. But again, any research you do into this, you just see the most amazing things where artistic
people are
people
so
who love
creative.
decorating their houses and being creative can turn their newsroom into something absolutely unique and special.
If you had a unique addition, something unique to your nerd room, what would you consider unique? I think your craft beer fridge is unique.
Oh, every dad has a beer fridge, right?
Not necessarily. Not everybody has the space to do so. You
All
didn't
right.
at the last place you lived.
That's true. I mean, I could have put a fridge in the garage where I did,
You could have,
kind of
but
thing.
your Warhammer
But I
table
didn't.
would have been all, yeah.
Yeah, we were competing for space with that stupid 6x4 table, which ridiculous. What a ridiculous idea to make a game that needs 6 foot by 4 foot table. Shame on you, Games Workshop. Yeah, I guess that would be the thing is like, that's why everybody comes back here because, if you're going to go to Rob's house, you're going to have a craft beer experience. It's always full of a variety of different craft beers and new brews and all this stuff. So yeah, that is something that draws people into the game room. And so I did purposefully knowing that people come through the door to get to the beer fridge. I put right across from the door is where our display case of miniatures and things are. Cause that's kind of a nice, oh wow, look at this, what you working on kind of thing. Instead of just maybe like a bookshelf or something that might get a little messy. So there was some purpose to that.
Yeah, I think your shelving idea was super unique because it's a great way to, you ask the question all the time, Self, what am I going to do with this when this game is over? And you have some pretty premier pieces in that shelf to display, even if you never touch them again for gaming purposes. They're there for display of the work that you've done. I think that display shelf is awesome.
Cool, thanks. What about you? What is unique about your room?
Probably the amount of Stephen King books that are in here.
Oh, yeah?
There's also a Stephen King group. Obviously, once we did our episode, started popping up on my Facebook all the time. But there's people who have like very creative, just Stephen King shelves that are like, looks like the Dark Tower from the series. And like, I'm not that fancy. I'm pretty close. At one point I had every book he had ever written, at least in hardcover, if not hardcover and paperback. And I've slowly sold off that collection little bit by little bit. But I would imagine in this room right now is everything he's written within the last 15 years. It's just tucked away in unique spaces.
Well, and it very much says this is on Elisa's space.
When he has a new book, I go get it at Costco. I don't know if that's unique. There's plenty of Stephen King fans out there, but maybe unique that I have a podcasting table and a work desk.
Right.
They don't match the decor, right? I didn't plan on the old dining room table to be placed in here. So it's wooden where everything else is like got a gray tone or white to it, but it's okay. I would say the unique is having one table just for podcasting and gaming and one table just for working and painting.
So then let's take that and let's skip down to the budgeting and DIY section, because I think a lot of times, especially starting out, I know it was for me, it's like we're just kind of taking stuff from here and there and repurposing it for these nerdy hobbies, right? The game shelf bookshelves that I had in here forever were just like bookshelves or old things. Like you were talking about how great the Calyx box is because it's designed, like the board games fit in there so well. I had a bunch of the ones that aren't great, like the Target ones that you were saying, you kind of put those canvas drawers and stuff in. And it was a pain because not everything fit, but darned if I didn't fill those up with books and stuff because they were available for me. They were in Andrew's room. He moved to something else. Okay, well, I'll just take this and make it work, right?
I don't know if I have DIY tips because I'm not much of a do-it-yourself person. I can measure and purchase the IKEA furniture or look at the dimensions and know that what I'm ordering is going to fit in the place. But what I will say is it took a couple tries to get to where this is. And even this probably needs some restructuring in some way, shape, or form. I think depending on the size of your room, most nerd rooms are done with a specific design in mind. This is where my wall of games is going to go. So I need shelves that are this size. And some people will build it themselves. And some people like me will go to IKEA and put together the furniture with the right measurements. But I think just understanding that I don't know that the nerd room is ever going to be stagnant. It's going to keep moving and shifting as our hobbies move and shift.
I would say don't underestimate the DIY potential. I don't think it's as complicated as it used to be, but there's a lot of DIY just in the idea of like the way that you were able to figure out that lighting and put the LED strips in your boxes and stuff. I'm sure you had to figure out how to mount and hook up that boom mic and all that kind of stuff. Like there are different things where it's like, it doesn't maybe seem DIY. Like I didn't come up with this great idea because YouTube is so easy, but it's like, I need a solution for putting more shelves in my display case. And it's like, oh, you could get these dowels and you can use these paperclip things and make different shelves. There's all kinds of little tricks as far as like in the big cupboards I have, I put lighting in there just by looking around at different ideas of like, oh, how to bring light into cupboards. And I have these like, they're mounts, and then in the mounts are like magnetic lights that I can pop out and charge and put back in there. And they're on a motion sensor so that when I open the cupboard, they turn on and illuminate my paints and stuff that are in there so I can see them better. It's not like, oh, well, I ripped open the wall and rerouted the plumbing and like all this kind of stuff. It's like, no, it's just, there's all these little ideas that we can implement to make that space just a little more unique, just a little more cool.
Yeah. And technology helps with that. You're right. Technology helps with that a lot. I see in the notes here, you put even like a snack bar, or coffee station. There's definitely examples of that where it's not necessarily a bar. No one has a whole like service bar where you have a bartender stand behind. They'll have maybe a fridge. In some cases, a themed fridge. One of the popular ones are like Red Bull fridges that have Red Bull on the sides and it's glass front so you can see what's inside. I think a coffee station is brilliant as long as it's away from the game table.
Right.
But you're right. Like I wanted the LEDs under the Calyx boxes and I had to do the research and figure out which ones would work for it. And this is the fourth boom mic that I had to buy and play with to see what would work with the table I have. Yeah, there's just so much potential in these spaces, depending on what you want.
I think a lot of it, like you said, it's always changing. It can be like, as far as like budgeting and stuff like this, it's like, well, none of us have a $50,000 budget to like, okay, we're going to make the dream perfect game room in one shot. Most of us are like little by little, and you're recognizing problems or places to improve. And then little by little improving those processes and those kinds of things, right?
I think my next step, I kind of want a whiteboard or a corkboard on here, but I don't know what to do with that yet. But I feel like I want to keep track of my 24 for 24 on a whiteboard instead of on an app. I haven't landed on any of that yet because this is all still morphing and changing.
Sure. I could see how that could kind of feed the aesthetic of the room as being a productive hobby place, is like if you've got the stuff written out and the goals and the check boxes and things getting crossed off, maybe, a little inspirational. Feels like, oh, here it is staring me in the face. You know, what I got to get done.
I also talk about DIY. I like, there's the Kickstarter, I think, that you had where the company was giving you 3D printing files for shelving for custom shelving in your nerd room that you could just print out and paint however you want, depending on the size you want. You just type in the dimensions and boom, it created a shelf for you to then 3D print, right?
Right. And it was all like modular, like little pieces that would fit on your build plate of your 3D printer, but you print enough of them and you could build huge display cases or shelvings or stuff. There's some that you could build like an entire, 4x4 game table, just print a little bit at a time, because it is what it is. It's just borders and flat edges and they all clip together and you can glue them and make this modular lightweight thing. Those are really cool. I have a project coming up on my list to do some miniature storage with something I recently found as well. That's very modular. You print out the screws, you print out the handles, you print out the hinges and assemble it all together.
You print out your own IKEA nightmare.
Yes, exactly.
That sounds great though.
We'll see. It looks really great on the Kickstarter. We'll see if in real life, like, none of this fits. It's all janky and breaking.
True.
You take your risks. Neither of us at this point, we talked about how mine is kind of attached to the house and people will come back here, but I'm not using my nerd room as a place where people are playing games anymore, and neither are you.
Correct.
But a lot of times these rooms could be and would be designed as a community space, whether it's your sporty nerd room for people to come over and watch the game, or it's your poker night room, or it's your D&D setup. What goes into the consideration of like having people over in your nerd space?
I mean, I think when I hear that question, I think first, like, I want to make sure I have the right types of shelves and storage that people aren't just going to like walk up and touch all my stuff.
Good point.
Right? Like that's a thing, but that's also because I do have knickknacks and things, collectibles in these shelves. So that's one thing that comes to my mind. But secondly, obviously the space, having the space for a big table for everyone to come around and play. I think about the room we had in Vegas to play our game. Now, granted, that was it wasn't that big. It was the smallest banquet room they had, but it was still a banquet room, as a meeting space where there was enough room to put a giant game table for us to play, and on the other side the buffet table where they put all the food and drinks that we had throughout the day, and a circular table for us to eat separate from that nerd room. So for me, that community space is the food is in another area, whether it's in the nerd room or maybe like I'm thinking about your space where your kitchen's right outside the nerd room, where your food's there, everyone's in here playing, just having the room to be able to invite people over and have a good time and have it look good and just create that atmosphere of like, we're here to play, we're here to game, let's do it.
That is one thing that's where I was going to go to, is like, if it's going to be that place where people are invited, it has to be clean. And a lot of times these hobby rooms get messy, right? Like the painting table is messy. The shelves are not always in order, and we're got things half out and half put away, and I'm just waiting for those card sleeves to come and then I'll finish putting this stuff away and that kind of thing. Like, that's not that community space. It's not inviting, right? That's okay, well, guys, squeeze in around my mess and we'll play a game.
I'm sorry I left all this stuff out, just leave it alone.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's got to be organized. In order to be organized, it goes back to that DIY. Like, how are you going to store everything? How is it going to look when you are waiting for the sleeves and this box is sitting here half open? Like, I think it just comes down to space. People, again, I think of the pictures I've seen where people have these really large game rooms where their hobbies are also just one little piece of it. And I think for the two of us, our nerd rooms really are where we do our hobbies, because gaming is somewhere else.
Yeah, that was the logical thing, was just to turn that kitchen table into the game table for folks, because that was a place where people were coming anyway. So you try to keep it clean, you try to, make it nice. There's good lighting, and then there's plenty of space for people to, move around and not sit elbow to elbow. When I had the giant table back here in the nerd room, it was tight. Like, you were elbow to elbow and you're kind of sitting up against the shelves and that kind of thing. And it was cool to have. And I think everybody was like pretty psyched that they were in a game room and stuff. But at the same time, it was like, I was always saying, like, no food in the game room, no drinks in the game room, because like, if you move wrong, you're knocking something over. Right. It was real tight.
It was fun, but the way you have it set up now is really cool.
Yeah. All things evolve and change and move on to the next one. All right. Anything else about game rooms?
Oh, I want to see your game rooms, nerds. Send us pictures. We'll post ours. Send us yours. I would love to see. To me, there are people out there who say say they like look at Zillow.com just to see other houses. I want to see other people's nerd rooms. I want to get ideas and I want to inspire to make my space even more welcoming and inviting. So share with us.
Absolutely. And I'd rather see a messy nerd room than no nerd room at all. So don't feel
100%.
like, I'm not going to take a picture because I got to clean it. Nah, just show me. What does it look like?
And show us what you're in the middle of right now. And we'll be like, oh, that looks super cool.
That's true. You'll see on the table, I'm working on blah, 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 blah. That would be great.
Podcast at nerdbestfriends.com to send us yours, or find us on Instagram at nerdbestfriends.
Slide into our DMs.
With them pics.
Like the kids say.
With our solicited nerd room pics.
Oh boy.
Onlygames.com. All right.
Okay. I may have missaid that. It's onlygames.co. I don't know what happens when you go into onlygames.com. That might actually redirect to the other one. I didn't try.
Don't let us know.
I don't want to know, but it's actually, and I still haven't gotten those miniatures because as a .co, it's somewhere over in Europe. It may not even exist, but the shipping is going to be 3 months from now, probably.
That tracks.
Well, it's also print to order, right? I ordered all this stuff. They have to print it and clean it and prep it and pack it and then ship it over from this might not be actually, maybe it's great because it'll keep me from ordering again until I see who knows? It's all bad. It's all bad. I have miniatures. I have a subscription where miniatures are delivered to my house every week.
What's the nerdiest thing you did this week, Rob?
The nerdiest thing I did this week is I picked up some of the new paints from the Army Painter Fanatics line.
They have new paints?
Oh, baby.
Okay.
Okay, wait. Pause the podcast. I'm going to blow you away.
It's a new paint line. It's not their speed paints, is it? That's the whole new set?
No, this is only like 50 of the 216 that it came out with the entire line.
Display case.
It came with a little display case to kind of check it out. It's super cool. And I actually I don't regret, but now that they're here and I'm thinking about it and I'm looking at what I got and stuff, I'm like, I should have just pulled the trigger and gotten the whole complete set.
Oh man, you like them that much.
They're real nice and they're real cool, but they're a new paint line that is regular pigment paints, right? So this would supplement your collection of your speed paints, but they have a ton of pigment in them. So they go on real smooth and like mostly one coat. You don't have to put on a bunch of coats to cover stuff up. They're nice and the texture's great. They work great on the wet palette, but also they've got a lot of pigment in them. So they're not thin and streaky. So far, I've just been using them for less than a week now. But the other thing that's so cool about it and why the complete set would be so rad is they come in perfect sets of 6 or in perfect sets of like 2 triads as far as a dark, a medium, and a light, or a base, a layer, and a highlight. So that's where there's just so many opportunities to have something that's just set up with a formula, with a structure like that.
It's kind of like you were talking about, I think 2 episodes ago, about like maybe making recipes because of the paints having ridiculous names and stuff. So this sounds like is on that display. You have, you're showing me a chart right now. Here is silver or gray, and within that set will be different tones of gray right next to each other.
Right. And in fact, even on the bottle, I don't know if you can see, it'll show you exactly on the bottle where this color lies. So it's like, okay, well, I want the end result, like I want the main color to be this, so I want to go with the next one over and the next one up, or 2 down and 2 up, or those kinds of things. Or to get like that whole display of 6 and stuff. It seems really fun to have it all and to paint things. Like I'm already thinking about like different dry brush and layering techniques I can do on some of like these huge monsters I have, and just be like, take it from like the deep sea green all the way up to like the turquoise for the highlights, and just get a lot of depth of color and different kinds of things. So I'm nerding out about the new Army Painter Fanatic paint range, and I am pretty sure that, some lucky person might get handed down this beautiful mega set as I
Oh my
replace it with the
goodness.
complete set maybe for Rob's birthday time later on this year.
Well, for the listeners, there's two things Rob's showing right now, and we'll put the Army Painter display on
Mhm.
our newsletter. But the other thing Rob showed on the screen was a bottle, and that bottle, it reminded me, like, if you ever buy pickles and it tells you like the spiciness of the pickle you're buying with that little mild, medium, spicy.
Yes.
That's kind of what it was on the side of the bottle, where it's showing you with a little arrow on a spectrum of color
On a
where that
spectrum
color is going to dry.
of color spiciness, if you will.
Yes. That's amazing. Army Painter. And I
So that's
like
what I've
that
been there now.
these,
Oh,
these names aren't crazy like the Citadel paints are.
no, and in fact, if you were to take one and it said, okay, so it does say this paint is called Mold Berry, but if you look at the side, it says this is a black purplish red.
That is, look at how helpful that is.
This
Amazing.
is a very light greenish blue. Incredible.
Thank you, Army
Yeah.
Painter.
Super smart. Army Painter's killing it. What's the nerdiest thing you did this week, Annalise?
Oh my gosh. The last few weeks itself have been bonkers. My school made a deep run in soccer playoffs. We won our regional CIF championship. They were all home games. Just the way the bracket went. They just upset.
Okay.
Oh, we're home. Upset. We're home. And
Nice.
after winning the championship, they go to North State region section finals to region finals. And they made it to the semifinal of the Northern State championships. And they all ended up being home game until that semifinal game and we lost. What that meant was we had to reschedule our incoming ninth grade night. We had to it ended the same week as open house. And then we couldn't do it this day because conference and Like, it's just been bonkers. And in the middle of all that, one thing that really changed the trajectory of my leadership was 3 years ago going to CATA for the first time. And the CATA conference, it stands for the California Activity Directors Association.
Okay.
And they do a conference every year. They've done it for 60 years. This year was their 60th conference, right?
Okay.
And it alternates between Southern California. They've been doing San Diego, but I think they've actually outgrown town and country in San Diego. And they're actually going to move to Palm Springs in 3 years from now.
Okay,
So
cool.
San Diego next year. And then every other year is in Reno. I don't know why the California directors would be in Reno,
funny.
except it's cheaper than the Bay Area. And what I like about CATA at Reno, this particular conference, is once you're there at the Grand Sierra Resort, there's nowhere else to go. It's not like you're in Vegas and you can go Uber to the next.
Right.
Everybody's there and it's just bonkers. This is one of the craziest conferences I've ever seen. And because it's activity directors based, you have all these big entertainment companies like SOS Entertainment, I believe my last site even used, where you have a menu of stuff. I want to host a homecoming and I want a 3D photo booth and I want big awning full of lights when kids are coming in the entrance and I want wall of video games and I want and you just menu and they bring the DJ and the dance floor and the lighting. Those companies host big parties. So a typical conference, you might have your sessions till 6 o'clock or so, and then you're done for the night till the next morning. From like 7 to midnight, every night of this conference, there's a big party in the bowling alley hosted by this company in this area, the dueling pianos and a dance floor and just every night for 4 days. It's bonkers. What they've done over the course of the 60 years of hosting this, the conference is actually extremely valuable when talking about culture. So schools will send teams of people who are embedded in helping school culture. So when I went for the first time, I think I was the only person from our district to go, not another activity director, not another AP over activities, assistant principal over activities. I think I was the only one. So I brought back all these great ideas. And now, at least the site I was at, they're going every year. The activities director, a teacher supporter, and the assistant principal over activities. It's a thing that they go every year now, which is awesome because it's not just for activity directors. It's about FICMAT and banking and all the laws with student generated funds. It's about how do you promote good culture and positive sportsmanship. CIF does sessions there. How do you promote this, and this leadership skills, and how do you manage reluctant staff to change, and how do you make inclusive spaces? Like, the sessions there are so valuable that it has really framed a lot of how I lead and how I want to lead my new school. But it's days and days of bonkerness. And so nerdiest thing I did this week was go to that conference and just have fun. I will show you.
So you went to work. So nothing. You did nothing.
No, I wish I could explain to you how this conference is like a big shot in the arm right exactly the point of the school
You
year you
didn't
need it.
you didn't read a comic book on the plane. You didn't go to a nerdy bookstore when you were out of town. You didn't do anything.
The conference itself is so nerdy.
Sounds like work.
I can't explain to you how bonkers this conference is, and the giveaways they have in their exhibits are such a huge thing that people will line up through the entire hotel to get there first and get all the free stuff. The nerdy part of it for me is going to those sessions that are going to help inform me make culture change at my school. It's good stuff.
If you say so.
Look, we can all be nerdy about work. In this case, Kata Conference is the thing, and it's something else. If you've been before, listeners, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, you're going to be as lost as Rob, but just trust me when I say it is most bonkers conference, and it's a lot of fun, We started this season with nerd travels and our D&D adventure to Las Vegas, and we're going to get ready for the end of season 3 with a discussion of our new nerd travel obsession, Barcades. Keep up to date with the Nerd Best Friends podcast by clicking on that subscribe or follow button on your device. We appreciate our fans, especially the ones that share our podcast with others and give us that 5-star rating wherever they listen to our show. We are at Nerd Best Friends on social medias, and you can send us a message through podcast@nerdbestfriends.com. These are the best and easiest ways to grow our nerd family. And send us pictures of your nerd rooms.
Let's see them nerd rooms.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening.
Stay nerdy.
Are you hearing noises?
No.
Oh, okay.
Are you?
Yes, I don't know what Maria's doing over there and on the other side of the wall outside, but it could be she could be scraping the paint off the wall. I don't it's so super loud. So
I think we're going to the same place. Go ahead. I got a keychain that's a drumstick from Knott's Berry Farm.